Welcome to California in Focus. I'm David Mastio, and today we're talking about alternative energy needs of California to deal with climate change. I'm joined by Kenneth Schrupp, California reporter for the Center Square. Kenneth, let's start talking about electric vehicles.
Hey, David. Electric vehicle sales in California are down over the prior year, but have stabilized after falling dramatically in the latter half of last year. However, with battery electric vehicles making up just about 21% of vehicle sales since the start of 2023, it's really unclear how the state is going to meet its mandate that 35% of new vehicles be battery electric vehicles by model year 2026, which starts in 2025.
So what you're saying is it's good news that electric vehicle sales have bottomed out, but it's not good enough news. California is still behind where it needs to be, or it says it needs to be.
Right. California is significantly behind its goals, which are in line with a broader goal of having all vehicles sold by 2035 be battery electric or plug-in or zero emission of some other kind. It's really unclear also how California is going to build out the energy infrastructure necessary for transitioning all of these vehicles to electric. We don't have the transmission capacity. We don't have the production capacity. We have to buy a lot of our energy from other states when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. So we're in for some rocky times if we're going to try to reach that 2035 goal.
These are self-imposed goals, right? So there's no consequences for California if the state doesn't meet them.
No, there aren't. And I think there's some other telling data that suggests there are other things California could do to reduce its carbon footprint if it so chooses. The 2018 wildfire season, for example, released more carbon dioxide into the air than the state's entire carbon emissions reduction beginning from the 90s through the late 2010s, suggesting reducing wildfires in the future is perhaps going to be the highest return on investment climate change and emissions reduction that the state could pursue.
Speaking of important investments, California got other news related to energy this week, multiple billions of dollars for hydrogen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's right. California just received a $12.6 billion federal grant. That's correct. Billion with a B. That's about as much money as an aircraft carrier costs to build out its hydrogen production and distribution capacity. California currently only has 55 hydrogen stations and another 108 in development. So if we are trying to have hydrogen be one of those components of that zero emissions vehicle by 2035 standard, we obviously would need to be able to make a lot more of it. This grant is part of the Biden administration's Hydrogen Earthshot Challenge, which is aiming to bring down hydrogen prices by 80% within a decade from about $5 a kilogram to about $1 per kilogram. Hydrogen is in some ways more feasible with today's infrastructure than EVs because you can transport it in existing natural gas infrastructure with minimal modifications. And you can even mix it in with natural gas as sort of a bridge fuel as you increase your hydrogen production capacity. California is targeting hydrogen deployment at more energy intensive industries that are difficult to decarbonize, such as heavy duty transportation. You don't really want to wait around for massive long distance trucks or high intensity applications when you can just refill something. You just need these things to keep operating. That's why this investment is targeting rollouts in the LA and Bay Area in the ports and public transportation. Now, I just want to go back a little bit because when you do look at California's emissions mandates for vehicles, you have to consider that if California has these restrictions on how many vehicles have to be sold that are zero emission, automakers have to just stop selling cars that aren't zero emission. Jeep has already come out and said that it can't ship more Jeeps to California because otherwise they won't meet their climate allocations. People want to buy more Jeeps, but they're just not allowed to sell anymore.
I understand that hydrogen vehicles offer some important advantages over electric vehicles. For instance, you don't need the same amounts of extremely rare earths that China dominates in order to build a hydrogen-powered vehicle.
Yeah, that's right. You don't need to have a giant battery. Currently, the hydrogen powertrains do use platinum, but I'm sure we'll be able to find some kind of workaround that doesn't require use of platinum. There's a couple of types of hydrogen vehicles. There are ones that use hydrogen fuel cells, where they create energy from stored hydrogen that produces only water vapor. And then there's also hydrogen combustion engines that actually run like normal car engines do, but they also, again, just produce vapor. Toyota and Yamaha partnered to build a hydrogen V8 engine. So just because we're going zero carbon doesn't mean that we're going to be stripped of our V8 engines if we do pursue a hydrogen fuel alternative.
Kenneth, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.